Here's an answer for question 2 of the January 2012 higher physics paper P1. So the diagram shows the national grid system. Okay, there's all the things you'd expect there. You've got the power station, step-up transformer, transmission lines, step-down transformer, and then finally to us. The national grid includes step-up transformers. Explain why. 2 marks there. Right, okay, so let's have a think about why they would bother to have step-up transformers. This question is all about the fact that unless you transmit at high voltage, you'll have energy losses. Okay, so let's put that in. So electricity must be transmitted at high voltage. To prevent energy loss. And then the step-up transformer itself, the step-up transformer increases the voltage from the power station. There we go, and that would be 2 marks. Right, moving on. Now, this is one of the 6 mark long answer questions, and this is the type of question that can be the difference between a whole grade of your paper, so it's 1 to get right. Let's read the instructions. In this question, you will be assessed on using good English, organising information clearly, and using specialist terms where appropriate. So we need to do all of that. Also, it's 6 marks, so I'm going to try and say 6 different things. If I read the question carefully and look at the command words, it'll tell me exactly what to do. Over the next 10 years, more than 300 kilometres of new high voltage transmission cable are to be added to the national grid. Most of the new cables will be suspended from pylons and run overhead. Okay, so suspended from pylons. So we've got 2 different types here. So we've got suspended from pylons and run overhead. That's part of the same thing, isn't it? While the rest will be buried underground. Outline the advantages and disadvantages of both. Okay, so let's start with the overhead ones. So let's split this into advantages. So the advantages are that they are cheaper, and easier to maintain. Now I've got 2 points there, haven't I? I've talked about cost and I've talked about maintenance, so that's 2 points. Let's think about a disadvantage of the overhead. However, and this is the disadvantage, they will be unsightly. Oh my goodness, unsightly. Right, rather than risk spelling something wrong and the examiner having an excuse to take a mark away, however, they will be ugly. There you go. So if you think it's going to be spelt incorrectly, why not choose a different word? Now what about the buried ones? Now look, I'm not writing a lot here, am I? I'm just writing enough to do 3 points. Buried. Well, the advantage is that they will be out of sight, definitely. That's a good start. They'll be out of sight. But the disadvantages, now what I'm going to try and do is think of different disadvantages if I possibly can. So the advantage is that they'll be out of sight. I'm struggling to do it, because what I'm wondering is it possible to put in different points rather than just have the advantages and disadvantages being reflected down here. I can't honestly think of a better way of doing it, so I'm going to go for that. So the advantage is that they will be out of sight. However, digging the trenches will cost extra money. And how about if there is a fault, it will be more difficult to find. Right, now I think that's probably 6 marks, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to look back at my command words and just check that I've done it. Have I included advantages? Yes. Disadvantages? Yes. Have I talked about both of them? Yes, I have. So I think that, that as far as I can see would be a top marking answer. Oops, let's just get rid of that. Right, I think there's a little bit more here. 2C. When an electric current flows through a transmission cable, a magnetic field is produced. Okay, that's around the cable. The graph shows how the strength of the magnetic field varies with distance from both overhead and underground transmission cables that carry the same current. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at this graph and see what I can see. So that's the strength of magnetic field in arbitrary units. Do you know what the unit of magnetic field is? The Tesla. We could just put that in. So if this is the underground, you can see that that field falls very quickly, doesn't it? It falls quickly, but it starts higher. So the first conclusion I could draw is, look, it starts a lot higher there. So it starts at 10 Teslas or whatever it is, whereas in the overhead, it starts at 6. But in the underground cable, it falls very quickly. Whereas in the overhead cable, it falls off much more slowly. I could put numbers on that, or could I put numbers on it? So I could say, I guess, that it will fall to 0 at approximately 30 meters from the underground cable and 50 meters from the overhead cable. Let me just go and have a look at the number of points on this question. What conclusions may be drawn? Well, there are only 2 marks, aren't there? So I would have thought if I used 2 of the 3 points that I've just made, so I could put the initial field is higher, in the underground, I could then put the overhead cable takes longer to fall to 0. Field takes longer to fall to 0. Okay, so again, conclusions, it wanted 2, I've given them 2, so that should be fine. Get rid of that. D. Okay, the last part of this. So some people think that because of the magnetic fields, living close to transmission cables is dangerous to health. Lab studies on mice and rats exposed to the magnetic field for 2 or more years found that the magnetic fields had no effect on the animal's health. 1 mark, draw a ring around the correct box to complete the sentence. Using animals in scientific research raises, well, what they're after there is ethical issues, because is it fair to subject other living creatures, mice and rats, exposed to magnetic fields? And no, because some people would question whether that's the right thing to do. In terms of economic things, mice and rats are very cheap, so it's not going to break the budget. Environmental issues, no, not really, because you would be doing this in a lab. So that's why ethical is the best answer.